A video has been making the rounds lately, gaining a fair bit of attention, and no, it's not my latest upload. It's titled "The Problem with Women in Games," and I'll admit, the provocative title piqued my curiosity. I wanted to understand the perspective being presented, but after watching it, I walked away more bewildered than enlightened. The creator's arguments not only fail to hold up under scrutiny, but she inadvertently undermines her own points multiple times throughout, seemingly unaware of the contradictions, and by the end, you're left wondering what message she was truly trying to convey. So I thought it would be interesting and maybe even a bit entertaining for us to break it down together and see what exactly is the problem with women in games.
Hi, I think I'm starting to spiral here. In every other kind of media, shows, books, movies, we expect characters to be these complex, emotionally layered, and oftentimes attractive people. CD Projekt Red gave us Geralt in a bathtub, and the entire internet said, absolute cinema. But when a female game character is hotter, suddenly it's like the studio committed some kind of war crime. And somewhere between 2014 and now, these types of women just started disappearing more and more from our Western games. You know, women who had beauty and charm and mystery, lip gloss, and the ability to just ruin your life with a single dialogue option.
Right out of the gate, her central thesis is that while male characters are still allowed to be attractive in video games, attractive female characters have been steadily disappearing since 2014, largely because they're now seen as problematic. But here's where things immediately start to fall apart. As she attempts to illustrate this supposed decline, she references female characters from games released after 2014, completely undermining her own argument. She points to the modern Lara Croft, whose latest game was Shadow of the Tomb Raider in 2018, Aya from Assassin's Creed Origins, which released in 2017, and Mary Jane from Spider-Man, which came out in 2018, and if I'm not wrong, she was also in Spider-Man 2, which released in 2023. 3 out of the 4 examples that she cites within the first minute of her video are women who supposedly embody the very traits which she claims are vanishing from Western games. Yet all of them appear in titles released after that cutoff point which she herself established. It's unintentionally hilarious, and it sets the tone for a video that seems determined to disprove its own premise.
So let's talk about the modern female protagonist. How did you feel when I said that? Yeah, that's what I thought. Typically, they're more emotionally walled off, they're vaguely angry, honestly, me too. They have tactical everything, tragic backstories, but a lot of times won't talk about it with you. Muted color palettes, and no cute hairstyles or makeup or joy, and they normally display more masculine traits.
I have to pause here because as she begins discussing the traits of modern female protagonists, the entire argument starts to feel deeply disingenuous, but let's take it one step at a time. Her first claim is that these characters are often emotionally closed off or perpetually angry. So to illustrate this, she displays an image of Jordan, a character from Naughty Dog's upcoming game Intergalactic: The Heretic Prophet. The problem is, this game hasn't even been released yet. We know virtually nothing about Jordan's personality, yet she's used here as proof of a trend. The only real controversy surrounding the character is that she has a shaved head, which seems to be the actual reason that she was chosen. And this makes this feel less like an argument based on substance and more like an attempt to play into existing biases and online discourse. The selective framing becomes even more glaring when you consider how common these traits are in male protagonists that are celebrated as gaming icons. Master Chief, for instance, is a very emotionally walled off character who every now and again shows glimpses of his humanity. Or what about Kratos, the embodiment of rage? Both of these characters are not only accepted, but celebrated. However, when similar qualities show up in female characters, suddenly it's a problem? She then says female characters now have tactical everything, and honestly, I have no idea what that even means. Are they not supposed to wear gear or carry weapons that fit the context of the story or gameplay? It's such an odd thing to bring up as a seemingly negative trait, especially since later in the video, she praises a female character for being tactical.
They have tactical everything. Jill is tactical, calm, and easily has the cleanest bob in gaming.
It's contradictions like these that make the entire video feel honestly bewildering. She also flashes an image of Kay Vess from Star Wars Outlaws, a game the community has been rather lukewarm on. The gameplay looked rough and unpolished, and it seemed to be met with mixed reviews, both positive and negative. Still, she seems to include it just so she can tap into that vague sense of negativity surrounding the title. The same goes for a character from the unreleased Fable game, another title that we know next to nothing about. At this point, she's leaned on 2 unreleased games and 1 mildly criticized one to support her case, which feels less like a genuine critique and more like an attempt to echo sentiments that she assumes the audience already holds. It's less analysis, more reinforcement, and frankly, it comes off as arguing in bad faith.
And I'm not saying that these characters can never work, but if they're not done extremely well, the issue isn't just that so many of them fall flat, it's that they don't resonate at all. They're not iconic, they're not aspirational, and they're just not the kind of character you want to think about after the credits roll. And just like the women that I obsess over in all my books and TV shows, the smart, complex, stunning characters, I just want to aspire to the character that I'm playing in a game. She should feel powerful and gorgeous and emotionally relatable in a way that makes sense. But most of the leads that we're getting nowadays, they're not memorable, and let's be honest, they're not exactly breaking the internet. Okay, at least in a good way. The characters that really stand out, that make a difference, they've got it all. They've got the looks and the charm and the presence and the personality, and they've got the things that make people care, or at least cosplay.
Her argument here essentially boils down to this: if a character isn't well written, they won't resonate with the audience, and, well, obviously, that's true for any character regardless of gender. Audiences crave compelling narratives and emotionally grounded characters that they can connect with. Gender isn't the deciding factor, quality is. In fact, I'd argue that from 2014 to the present, we've seen an increase in well-crafted female protagonists across the board. As the game industry has matured, it's opened the door for more nuanced, emotionally resonant storytelling. Take A Plague Tale, for example. Amicia isn't a larger-than-life heroine, she feels like a real girl, thrust into horrific circumstances. We watch her lose her innocence and grow into someone fiercely protective of her younger brother. It's a powerful and humanizing journey. Or consider Split Fiction, which just came out. It dives into trauma and emotional repression. Characters may begin emotionally walled off, just as she mentioned, but the entire narrative revolves around breaking those walls down and healing through connection. That's not lazy writing, that's layered storytelling. There are countless other examples I could cite, but the point is, we're not seeing fewer compelling female characters, we're actually seeing more across a wider range of genres and tones than ever before. What's even more telling is how she chooses to support her claim that modern female characters aren't memorable. Rather than referencing widely praised characters like Faith from Mirror's Edge, Six from Little Nightmares, or even from Lost and Random, she instead points to Concord, a failed hero shooter with little cultural impact, as if that somehow represents the state of all women in modern Western gaming. This tendency to go for low-hanging fruit and present it as representative of an entire trend feels not only intellectually lazy, but deeply disingenuous. Hey, we all hated this game, so it clearly proves my point. It's a hollow argument dressed up as a cultural critique, but I digress.
Well, we didn't want to over-sexualize her. Okay, that's fine. I'm on board with that. But somewhere along the way, that turned into she can't flirt, or cry, or be too gentle, or smile too much, or wear makeup. Yes, sorry, I'm gonna hit on that a little bit today. We went from don't objectify her to don't let her feel like a real person. And she can be strong, but not soft, beautiful, but only if it's on accident. Heaven forbid she has feelings and good hair at the same time. And I think about this every time that I get the opportunity to make a custom character in a game. She is always a baddie that has lore. Winged eyeliner, mysterious aura. Every NPC in the game is in love with her, and honestly, they should be, okay? My tab in Baldur's Gate 3. An angel. She walks into a scene and the lighting just poof, gets better. Gale starts sweating, and Asterion is chomping at the bit, Shadowheart's having some conflictions, and her inventory is even more iconic. She's got 3 cursed rings, an apple, and a morally questionable tiara that she just doesn't want to take off.
She argues that much of the shift in female character design stems from backlash against the over-sexualization of women in games, suggesting that, as a result, female characters now don't feel real to her, or apparently don't look as beautiful anymore. And to that, I can only say beauty is subjective. Like anything valued in life, its worth lies entirely in the eye of the beholder. Some people are drawn to women like Rhea Ripley, others to entirely different aesthetics. Neither is more valid than the other. There's no universal definition of beauty, and that's the point.
And it just makes you wonder, because if certain games let you create characters with so much charm and magnetism, why can't games with dedicated female leads do the same thing? Well, what are some of the more recent female leads that we've been graced with? I think about Frey from Forspoken. She can fight dragons and bend the laws of physics and literally parkour across dimensions. That's super cool, but for some reason they gave her the most awkward dialogue and had her deliver every line like she was on hold with customer service. On mute. What about Kay Vess from Star Wars Outlaws? She's a scrappy space outlaw, in theory. In practice, she kinda just plays like she just respawned from a bug and isn't sure where she is or why she's there. Okay, well, what about female Ivor from Assassin's Creed Valhalla? Actually, she was canonically the real one. But you probably wouldn't know that, because even Ubisoft was like, dang, that's crazy. Anyway, check out this guy's beard. Or Dragon Age the Veilguard. This game was like 10 years in the oven, and somehow it still came out soggy. It often felt cringy instead of charming, and there really wasn't much mystery, but there was a lot of lecturing. And instead of emotionally rich companions, we kinda just got chronically online Twitter bios and fantasy outfits.
She then begins critiquing recent games featuring female leads, starting with Forspoken. And I'll admit, I'm not deeply familiar with this game, but from what I've seen, her critique actually sounds reasonably grounded. But then she shifts to Star Wars Outlaws and Kay Vess, and rather than analyzing the character herself, she critiques the gameplay.
What about Kay Vess from Star Wars Outlaws? She's a scrappy space outlaw, in theory. In practice, she kinda just plays like she just respawned from a bug and isn't sure where she is or why she's there.
Which raises the question, what exactly does that have to do with the quality of the female lead? A game's mechanical flaws aren't a reflection of the character's gender or narrative depth. And here's where things get a bit more amusing. Remember, she introduced this segment by saying she wanted to evaluate games with dedicated female protagonists.
Why can't games with dedicated female leads do the same thing? Well, what are some of the more recent female leads that we've been graced with?
Yet her next example is Ivor from Assassin's Creed Valhalla, a game where players can choose to play as male or female. That's not a dedicated female lead, but let's hear her out.
Well, what about female Ivor from Assassin's Creed Valhalla? Actually, she was canonically the real one, but you probably wouldn't know that, because even Ubisoft was like, dang, that's crazy. Anyway, check out this guy's beard.
She seems to suggest Ubisoft somehow hid the female version of Ivor was the canon choice, which is an odd point to make, seeing as that has nothing to do with female Ivor as a character. Also, Assassin's Creed Odyssey did the very same thing, allowing players to choose between Alexios and Cassandra was ultimately the canon character. So what exactly is the issue here? She then moves on to Dragon Age the Veilguard, yet another game with a customizable protagonist and not a dedicated female lead, but we'll let it slide. While it's true that many found the writing and presentation underwhelming, this wasn't a problem exclusive to the female characters. The male characters were criticized just as much, as she even seems to point out.
And instead of emotionally rich companions, we kinda just got chronically online Twitter bios and fantasy outfits.
That's not a gender issue, that's a writing issue. So once again, we're left with an argument that feels muddled, selectively framed, and overly reliant on superficial takes.
I think you get the point, but I'm gonna say it anyway. We need female characters with range, with presence, with a little drama, if you will. The girls who made you feel something were not perfect. They were messy and charismatic and complicated in the best way. Sadie Adler from Red Dead 2, her husband literally dies and she goes, cool, I'm going feral now. And grieving? Yes. Stunning? Yes. Horse girl? Absolutely. But I would let her run me over with that horse. Chloe Fraser from Uncharted. She's flirty and morally flexible and somehow still makes betrayal feel hot. Tifa Lockhart from Final Fantasy. She could literally take down a behemoth in one hit and then quietly make you some soup and ask if you've been sleeping okay. Max from Life is Strange, a super sweet, anxious girl who accidentally rewrote the entire space-time continuum just because she had too many feelings, and honestly, we love a relatable queen. Or Nabooru from the Legend of Zelda series. She leads armies and fights evil, and somehow she still looks like she's posing for a Vogue cover the entire time. Probably my first girl crush. This should not be controversial.
I wholeheartedly agree that we need characters who make us feel something, characters that resonate on a human level, and as I've already mentioned, we've had plenty of those, especially in recent years. What I find particularly ironic is her choice to highlight Sadie Adler as a standout example. Don't get me wrong, she's a fantastic character, but she's from Red Dead Redemption 2, a game released in 2018, which once again contradicts her own narrative that well-written, strong female characters are disappearing from Western games. On top of that, Sadie embodies many of the traits that she previously criticized. She wears practical clothing, is emotionally intense, unafraid of violence, and often acts like one of the guys. She's not dolled up in makeup or dressed in flowing gowns. Yet, these traits are suddenly a positive? That completely undermines her earlier point.
Typically, they're more emotionally walled off, they're vaguely angry, honestly, me too. They have tactical everything, tragic backstories, but a lot of times won't talk about it with you. Muted color palettes, and no cute hairstyles or makeup or joy, and they normally display more masculine traits.
You can't condemn a trend and then celebrate it when it fits your preferred example.
I'll say it. We need to bring back great male leads. Okay? And not because women can't carry a story, but because we've just chucked balance off a cliff. It seems like the knee-jerk reaction to underrepresentation accusations became all female everything forever, no notes. And now, after we've gotten so many forgettable female leads, not you, Ellie and Aloy, my queens. But with all the others, we've hit this weird place where the audience is already exhausted before the trailer even ends. And unfortunately, caught in the crossfires of this has been Naughty Dog's new IP, Intergalactic, and Ghost of Yotei.
Then she shifts gears and claims we need to bring back great male leads because supposedly the pendulum has swung too far in favor of female protagonists? What? I've played over 1,200 games on Xbox alone, and I'd say that 90% of them feature male leads. We continue to see fantastic male protagonists in games year after year. The idea that they're somehow vanishing just doesn't hold up. It sounds less like a real industry issue and more like a narrow sampling problem. Maybe she's just not playing enough different games. She then praises Ellie and Aloy, two of the most acclaimed female protagonists in modern gaming, which again, completely unravels her central claim. Both characters come from Western studios and were developed within the very time frame she says is lacking in strong female representation. The contradictions, however, don't stop there.
But when I think about just well-written women in games, what's interesting is some of gaming's best women were not even the protagonist, but they were the scene stealers. Ciri from The Witcher 3 is quite literally the entire reason that Geralt is risking his life across these war-torn kingdoms, and she's this complicated, beautiful, just wild young girl who's somehow still more mature than everyone else around her. Or Yuna from Final Fantasy X, this graceful, selfless, and devastating character who's literally carrying the hopes of an entire world on her back, and then she still apologizes when she inconveniences you. And if that's not being a girl, I don't know what is. Or Midna from Twilight Princess. Alright, she's a little bit annoying at first, but she bullies Link for the first 30 hours of the game, saves his life, opens a dimensional portal, and then vanishes all with a glowing tear. He never says a word to her the entire game, but she says everything with her absence. Truly a legendary situation.
She goes on to suggest that female characters are perhaps better suited as supporting roles rather than leads, and cites Ciri from The Witcher 3 as an example of a well-done side character. But again, CD Projekt Red is a Western studio, so her logic continues to crumble under the weight of her own examples. And really, why can't we have both? Why can't we enjoy playing as Prophet in Crysis 3, and also step into the shoes of Amanda Ripley in Alien Isolation? It just strikes me as odd that she seems to be advocating for fewer female leads, as if giving women the spotlight somehow diminishes the quality or diversity of games. That's not a critical take, that's a limitation of perspective.
And while Western games are nervously nerfing kind of every trace of femininity from their female characters, Eastern devs are like, yeah, here's a mysterious woman who could kill you and make you cry about it. You're welcome. Capcom? They've been in their iconic woman era since like forever. Resident Evil is one of my all-time favorite series, and Jill is tactical, calm, and easily has the cleanest bob in gaming. Ada is mysterious, stylish, and she might lie to your face, but she's still gonna get a fan cam. Claire is this beautiful, kind, capable woman who takes zero nonsense, and Lady D had like 10 minutes of screen time in Village, and she still owned Halloween for like the next 2 years. They're hot, they're cool, they've got so much range, and you remember them. You want to be them, or you just kind of want them to emotionally damage you just a little bit. It's the same kind of energy with Monster Hunter Wilds. They dropped a couple of composed, stunning women, and the internet instantly started to cosplay. They're expressive and graceful, and they've just got that magnetism about them. And that's why the boys are in love, the girls are in love, and I am in love. And then we've got From Software, who just casually releases the most haunting, elegant women in modern gaming like it's nothing. The doll from Bloodborne, our favorite Victorian comfort character. She's soft-spoken, she's gentle, and she definitely knows more than she's letting on. Or Lady Maria, tragic, terrifying character with perfect posture, and 10 out of 10, I would let her fight me again. Or Ronnie from Elden Ring, who I was quite literally on my knees for, and I made sure to do every single step of her quest so I could serve her as me Elden Lord. Or Melina. Melina was so glowing and quiet and just sad. And then when she leaves you at the sight of Grace, like, my work here is done. And you're just devastated, and you're just sitting there all by yourself, alone, in your little tunic. These ladies do not need exposition dumps or 80 cutscenes. They just show up and drip elegance, drop one line of vague sorrow, and then next thing you know, you're obsessing over cosplays and fan art for like the next month.
In this part of the video, she shifts focus to praising Eastern developers, and to be clear, I have a deep appreciation for many Eastern titles. I mean, I am, after all, a massive Sonic the Hedgehog fan, but when she holds up certain characters like Lady D from Resident Evil Village as prime examples of well-crafted female representation, it raises some questions. She admits Lady D only had about 10 minutes of actual screen time.
And Lady D had like 10 minutes of screen time in Village, and she still owned Halloween for like the next 2 years.
Which makes me wonder, where's the meaningful development? Where's the emotional depth and growth that she previously claimed were essential for a character to resonate?
We expect characters to be these complex, emotionally layered, and oftentimes attractive people.
Because, if anything, Lady D's popularity stems largely from her overt sexualization, not from narrative complexity or layered characterization. And this is where I think the argument begins to blur. There's often a conflation between femininity and sexualization, as if the two are interchangeable, but they're not. Femininity can be powerful, nuanced, and multidimensional. Over-sexualization, on the other hand, often flattens characters into aesthetics rather than people. So if her goal is to highlight strong female representation, this example feels more like a contradiction than anything else.
I say all of this because femininity is not outdated. It's not shallow, and it's not something that you need to water down for the story to be taken seriously. It's range. So please let women be cute and manipulative, kind and a little chaotic, soft but have sharp teeth, pretty, powerful, emotionally devastating, and the reason the protagonist starts journaling in a cave somewhere.
In the end, she wraps up by saying we need to let femininity be. And honestly, I'm left wondering, who exactly is she addressing? Because when I look at the landscape of modern gaming, I don't see a systematic erasure of femininity. Sure, there are always outliers, but if anything, her own video inadvertently proves that Western developers have continued to create female characters who are feminine, powerful, and multidimensional.
Because femininity is Zelda, steadfast and radiant, and standing between her kingdom and ruin with nothing but hope and stubborn grace. Or Triss, who's clever and compassionate and plays politics with you with a super soft smile that just makes you kind of forget that she's winning. Or Bayonetta, who's playful and provocative and treats every battlefield like a runway and then never manages to smudge her lipstick. Or Lightning, who's a beautiful, guarded, and grieving character who carries the entire weight of the world in 6-inch heels. And when female characters are done right, they're not flat or abrasive or weak. They're actually narrative gold. They have tension and softness that stabs, or beauty as a weapon. Let's let women be gorgeous and terrifying, sweet and strategic, gentle and unhinged. Let them be feminine again.
She claims that when female characters are done right, they aren't flat, but isn't that true of any well-written character regardless of gender? The goal should be dynamic, fully realized individuals who have emotional depth, growth, and nuance. That's not a gendered standard, it's a storytelling one. She also says that these characters shouldn't be abrasive, but I'd challenge that notion. Across all forms of media, we've seen brilliant, abrasive female characters who are beloved precisely because of their edge and complexity. Take Toph from Avatar: The Last Airbender. She's tough, blunt, and emotionally guarded, but those traits are rooted in her upbringing and evolve beautifully over the course of the story. Or consider Mio from Split Fiction. Abrasive at first, a sharp contrast to Zoe's more open demeanor, but over time, their relationship allows her to grow, soften, and reveal more of herself. That's compelling writing. What's most baffling is that her argument seems to advocate for putting female characters into a specific mold, but that mold keeps shifting. Her criteria for what makes good female characters are so contradictory that by the end, the argument collapses under its own weight. At the end of the day, it doesn't really seem like she has an issue with women in gaming. From what I can gather, her main desire is simply better writing. And on that point, I think most of us can agree. Strong storytelling and well-developed characters should always be the goal, no matter the gender. What strikes me as odd though is how often these conversations get politicized or polarized, not to foster meaningful dialogue, but seemingly just to make a splash. If she had taken the time to do deeper research or played a wider range of games, she'd see that the industry is full of compelling, well-written female characters. The evidence is out there, you just have to look for it. What's more surprising perhaps is how widely this video was embraced. Despite its shaky structure and contradictory arguments, it reminds me that sometimes the loudest takes get the most traction, even when they lack nuance, but hey, that's the internet for you. Anyways guys, that's all I have for you. Thanks for joining me on this breakdown. Until next time, I'm wishing you all the best. Take care. Peace.